The other week I talked about some popular class ideas intrepid players created concepts for. To their credit, their popularity is understandable, and I did not give these ideas the full attention that they deserve. This is mostly because there are so many differences in the details that I couldn't hope to express them all the same way these passionate and talented thinkers could. It's their ideas after all. I can only speak for myself on my own little YouTube soapbox, so now that you're here, I'm gonna throw my name in the hat. Let's design a class. Should be easy, right? Hey, it's Soul, bringing you the World of Warcraft. Today I'm gonna have some fun. I'm gonna mock up a concept of a new WoW class with some ideas for specs, an outline for a backstory, and how to implement this class. Throughout this piece, we'll consider some design challenges Blizzard will face, and by the end, I won't have designed the greatest class ever ready for launch tomorrow. I won't even have a complete idea. There won't be much in the way of details at all because trying to go as far as create abilities and rotations is a waste of time for any one individual, but maybe, just maybe, we'll have a neat idea a designer can run with. Let me repeat myself here, this is just a concept. Design is a group process. And I have zero design experience, but if there's one thing I do know about being a designer, it's that no matter how much passion and thought put in, and you think that your idea is like your own baby, there'll be many times where you've got to let that baby go. And no, I don't mean that literally. In our previous video, I talked about how a new class has historically fit the theme of the expansion it's introduced in. Death Knights for Lich King, Monks for Mist, Demon Hunters for Legion. There's obviously a strong connection between expansion and class. Considering our historical references, 2 expansions after Legion might bring us a new class, and maybe a new race. Let's assume this is true. What could the next expansion be? Popular ideas include a trip to Argus, the South Seas, another continent in Azeroth, the Emerald Dream, a Void Lord kind of world, and well, the list goes on. This narrows our list of possible classes somewhat, but I want to challenge that restriction. Does the class absolutely have to fit the expansion's theme? I'm going to throw a limb out there and say no, maybe not. I'm going to try an approach of introducing a class that doesn't necessarily have to be part of the expansion it's launched in. Now this immediately brings up the question, why have the class at all then? An expansion sets the stage for this kind of thing, right? To that, I'd like to tell a short story, because if an expansion isn't going to help frame this new class, we need an effective story to explain how this class came to be. Or if it was always there. This is the story of one man who's lived throughout WoW's story thus far, but has been overlooked until now. We don't know his or her name, but let's call him Bill. Let's make Bill a human, and let's have the starting experience begin in Westfall. Oh, and did I mention that this experience starts as kind of a flashback all the way back to the days of classic WoW? Well, I just did. Bill works for a group of scavengers. This is no ordinary group though, it's more like a company that follows the exploits of the latest happenings in Azeroth. In fact, this company is run by a goblin who employs anyone looking for a buck or gold. It doesn't matter if they're human, orc, forsaken, dwarf, or even a fellow goblin. In Westfall, Bill's company is going through what's left in the Defias family's hidden holding, otherwise known as the Dead Mines. The Defias' entire operation was just recently dismantled by 5 people. With most everyone inside dead or scattered, Bill and his crew of bottom feeders move in to clear the rest of the place out of loot and life. Bill's good with a gun, even though he's never been in a war. Bill's boss likes him enough and has him perform special tasks in the Dead Mines. Disarm this, deactivate that, haul some dangerous cargo, knock a few heads, that sort of thing. The company moves from place to place following wakes of destruction, looking for riches that so-called adventurers and champions leave behind. It's their livelihood. It's their job. Bill's job takes him through the timeline of World of Warcraft in the aftermath of major and minor events, and he has his own adventures. Most notably, during his company's travels, Bill befriends a wandering ogre, lost after his clan was wiped out by adventurers down in Fairless. After a born-again kind of ogre experience, he's named Bob by Bill. At another point, Bill and his new friend and the company find some incredible contraption that, for plot-based reasons, only Bill's ogre friend can operate. This is important later. Bill and Bob have almost whimsical adventures together on the job. They help break ground in Area 52 over in Outland and try to loot the tombs of Oldham. They try to mine a rare form of Serenite right under the new Lich King's nose and get in lots of trouble for drinking on the job while helping the Storm Stouts. Basically, players will jump forward in time as these two undergo one assignment after another until they reach our present, or somewhere close to that. A fateful encounter leaves Bill and Bob, or you and your ogre companion, left to choose between the Horde and the Alliance to further their need to just get by in this crazy world. Bill and Bob make the new class, both of them, together. Obviously I don't have a name of this class, but that's intentional. Bill is just a guy with a job and a gun. Bob is just an ogre with an amazing and dangerous weapon. The name of this class doesn't necessarily have to be based on some iconic theme or ability. Maybe the name is based on them. Maybe they're just buddies. Okay, that's an awful name, let's move on. Bill and Bob's story will let players revisit parts of WoW's iconic adventures from a very different perspective. They'll lean away from the pressures of world-ending threats like Deathwing and the Lich King and see the aftermath of what Azeroth's champions left behind. What happened to the Underhold, that huge labyrinth under Orgrimmar? And did anything significant happen in Azeroth while our champions were in an unshattered Draenor? Introducing the class in this way where it involves elements of WoW that were already experienced by players is bound to result in some retroactive continuity, or retcons. We've seen this as recently as with Demon Hunters, where the details behind Illidan's demise were somewhat altered. Part of the premise of this class isn't just to bring in something new, but to give additional narrative and nuance to the WoW that was left behind. An approach like this is basically immune to the concern that a new class should fit the design of the expansion it's introduced in. In this case, Bill and Bob were always just a step behind or in the background, picking up after the adventurers who laid waste to the enemies of the world. Because of that, they can be introduced at any time. 12 years of WoW allows for this kind of idea. So both Bill and Bob make up this new class. Essentially, it's a race of the player's choosing with an ogre companion. Under the context of the narrative I built, we're restricted to a handful of the races that were available in classic WoW, and goblins. This class will have 3 specs, with obvious differences, but I'm gonna leave the flavor and theme mostly out of it. This class has no name, so we can keep things open. The only hard requirement is that Bill and Bob work together. In terms of gear, Bill will wear male gear. Bob will unfortunately not wear a matching set, but that's what glyphs are for. The first spec is what players will first experience when starting out as this class. Bob uses a ranged weapon, and regardless of the active spec, a ranged weapon will be the only weapon of this class. As players progress through an abridged, almost episodic leveling experience, Bob will join them and almost act like a hunter pet, but not quite. For the most part, Bob, or your ogre, will stand closely at the player's side, and also perform ranged attacks using the special weapon designed for it that was picked up during the introductory experience. As for what that could be, use your imagination. It could be a Titan artifact, some goblin rocket launcher, whatever suits your fantasy. What these weapons and abilities will end up being will define the name of the class, so yeah, a Tinker-like class is possible. To fit the fantasy and illusion of controlling 2 characters, maybe abilities can be split among man and ogre, and each could have their own separate global cooldown. The second spec will be a healer, but I never said that Bill was a very good healer. Maybe Bill can perform first aid techniques while Bob uses his magical, technological Mary Sue weapon to heal. It'd be neat if players could assign their ogre companion to follow an assigned ally around and throw heals at other nearby allies, and its target too, while your main character used, I don't know, long-range bandage technology or a healing spray cannon, I don't know. The third spec will be a melee spec, and it wouldn't be right if Bill was clubbing enemies with his ranged weapon while Bob played cheerleader. Instead, Bob, that is your ogre, will be the controllable character, and Bill is now sort of a companion that follows him. Bob will inherit the same stats as Bill, even though Bill is wearing all the gear, including whatever weapon he uses, unless an artifact-like weapon system will be used in the future. But imagine finally playing as an ogre in a power suit, or Titan-made pneumatic fists, letting you wail on enemies with phenomenal cosmic power. Meanwhile, Bill supports you with suppression fire to slow enemies, tosses you a bandage, or paints a target for additional damage. Or is a cheerleader. There's a question I still haven't quite answered. Why make a new class anyway? There's some valid arguments to counter the idea, such as the expected bloat when it comes to balancing the additional specs that this class will bring. There's the expected opinion that this or any new class just wouldn't be attractive for a lot of players. But let's assume that Blizzard would be happy with the specs that this class would bring. It behooves them to deal with balance challenges. It's not for fans like you and I to feel sorry for Blizzard and be like, oh, there, it's okay, you don't have to do it if it's too hard. In conversations about class balance, Blizzard has repeatedly reminded us that there are over 30 specs to juggle around. But I don't think that the purpose behind that statement is for us to sympathize with how difficult their work is, but just to have a bit of empathy for the work that they do regardless of the difficulty. If Blizzard wants to give us a new class and it feels right to deliver it, they'll do it with full understanding of their newfound burdens. Anyway, this class will cover a few concerns for players. We'll get the first added range specialization into the game, significant now that Survival Hunters are now a melee spec. We'll get the second healing spec after Mistweaver Monks. Players can play as ogres. A certain desire for a technology-based class can be fulfilled depending on the theme. A new class, as opposed to adding specs to existing classes, allows for wild interpretations of class fantasy, as well as a chance for designers to stretch their imaginations, create new tech, and not feel limited by the already existing classes. The idea of, say, a Shadow Hunter or a Dark Ranger sounds neat as a spec for hunters, rogues, or even demon hunters. But how much of a departure would that spec be from the inner core of the original classes? This is just an example, of course, but my point is that a new class, especially one unencumbered by expansion themes, is a blank slate that designers can use to think up all sorts of crazy ideas. Share your thoughts, and stay breezy.